Hi guys, today we're going to talk about several really good tips to help you get through the holidays without weight gain. Many people find that they struggle with all of the various activities and stressors in able to get through the holidays without gaining weight. In fact, on average, Americans gain at least 1 pound just through the holidays. And for many people, they don't lose it. Hi, I'm Dr. Tim with Optimize Wellness Center. Thanks for taking the time to check into this video. If you find it interesting, make sure to press the like button and subscribe to our channel. All right, guys, so we're going to talk about a handful of really helpful tips to get you through the holiday season. And I want to try and provide these as a way to give you some incentive, as well as encouragement, as well as some solutions to get through the holiday season. Not all of these will help each and every individual, but hopefully some of them will get you through with success. All right, so let's dive in here. So as I mentioned earlier, many individuals find that they gain at least 1 pound through the holiday season, some even more. On average, Americans actually consume 25 pounds of sugar on an annual basis. That's a lot of sugar. If you were to put all of those bags of sugar in front of you, that's an enormous amount and not very healthy. So we need to consider the ways in which we're going to be able to avoid that holiday weight gain. And what we do know is also when people gain that weight, they start to have a different opinion of themselves. They also change to their activity levels, and there are a variety of other things that happen that are not always very helpful or attractive for themselves. All right, so one of the important things is to try and make sure to be active and be active with your friends and your family during the holidays. Plan those activities so that you can get movement. A lot of holiday activities often focus on sitting around and eating and drinking, which is wonderful to have those engagements with your family and your loved ones and friends, etc. But it's also important that you can do those same things while you're getting movement and activity. And so plan for those. The more that people plan, the better that they are able at achieving those outcomes. And so making sure that while you maybe have some time to sit down in front of the television and watch a movie or look at old photos and regale those stories, you also have time to get outside into nature and go for a walk or enjoy a swim or some other kinds of sporting activities that you and your family and friends enjoy. That can be really helpful to make sure to stave off that weight gain. Now, some other things that people find is snacking wisely. There's often a lot of intermittent time in between activities when you're going from one relative's house to another friend's house, or maybe between one activity at the home to another. And there's a lot of food around, which is wonderful to share the bounty and the enjoyment of all the beautiful recipes that have been passed down through traditions, and you're sharing those with your family and friends and loved ones. It's also important to snack wisely. And so that means making sure to have available and accessible to you things that would also be healthy and be filling and enriching. So while maybe you do have some cookies or some pastries or some sweets, also making sure that that's not the entirety of the things that you're snacking on. Maybe making sure that there's some vegetables and some fruits and other things that you can snack on easily and grab those and making sure that you're getting full in those things as well. Now, that can stave off your hunger pangs while also making sure to limit your sweet tooth. Now, watch your portions. So portions are really an important thing during the holidays. There's so much bounty around, and especially when we're going from one person's house to another, or this restaurant or another place, and there's these big meals and feasts, which is glorious for all of us to share in. It's also important to make sure that we're not overeating. And so make sure as you plan for how much you're going to put onto your plate, only plan for as much as you can eat so you're not being wasteful, and then also to make sure that you are not diving in for extras and extras. There's a Japanese tradition called hara hachibu, which is meaning that essentially that you eat only until you're 80% full. And then you pause and you wait until you can determine whether you need any more. And typically what we find is those stretch receptors in our stomach, we need somewhere around 15 minutes to pause and wait and see before we get the signals to our brain to determine whether we're still in fact really hungry or not, and not just eating for the sake of eating. So that might be something for us to consider in our own traditions. Now, practice mindful eating. This can be really important as well. And so while we're sitting down and we're watching a movie or chit-chatting and so forth, that we're not just continuing to grab and put more food in our mouth just for the sake of eating and grabbing foods. But maybe that we're sitting down purposefully, we're engaging in a very spirit and heartfelt meal, and we're sharing in that wonderful time together with friends and family, but we're being intentional about what we're eating and when we're eating and how much we're eating. And so we're not being distracted and just eating anything at any time. And so that can be really helpful as to avoid overeating and packing on those pounds. Now, getting plenty of sleep is really important also, because sleep is a time that we are going into that parasympathetic rest, digest, and repair phase. And when we're digesting those foods, we're processing them and we're storing the things that we need, and we're getting them ready to burn the next day or later in the day for the things that we need to do. And so that sleep is super important to make sure that we don't pack on those pounds and that we're able to process those foods adequately. So getting the appropriate amount and the right kind of sleep and good deep restful sleep is really important. We have another video on sleep as well, and so I encourage you to check that out also. So making sure to plan for the appropriate amount of sleep and sleeping in the right environment during the holidays can be really important. This can be difficult when we're traveling to other people's homes and we have extensive amount of time and we might be arriving late or leaving early or something of that nature. So planning to accommodate for your biologic clock is an important thing to do. Now, controlling stress. Now, often we think of the holidays as being a time that we can rejoice with family and friends, and that we're moving away from potentially a stressful cycle at work or other activities that we're doing and going into something that is a little bit less rigid and a little bit more flexible oftentimes. But sometimes there's stress involved in that as well. How are we going to travel? Do we have the right things to take with us? Where are we going to be staying? Are we going to get enough of all of those things in during that time and satisfying everyone's concerns and desires and wishes? So planning and talking about those can be really important to minimize stress, because stress is a sympathetic activity. And this is where in that sympathetic we have, we're running from the bear. And so if we're running from a bear, we shunt all of our blood and all of our nutrients to our arms and our legs to run, and we are not resting and digesting. They are opposites of each other, and so we want to make sure to minimize our stress and try and be in that parasympathetic and rest and digest and relax and repair our bodies during these times of the holiday seasons. So making sure that we have balanced meals can include making sure that we have adequate amounts of the rainbow array of nutrients, as well as making sure that we have the right kinds of nutrients and adequate amounts of protein. Now, protein is super important because many holidays are filled with carbohydrate-rich foods. And these are fast foods. They digest and metabolize very quickly. But also we tend to use those and pack on pounds. Now, the protein, by contrast, is going to be really helpful to create a sustained energy source. It's going to sustain our muscles as well as avoid us from continuously and constantly feeling hungry. And so it's important to consider where and when you're going to get adequate amounts of protein in each of your meals. Now, for most people, what we notice is it's important to get somewhere between at least 1 ounce or 25 to 30 grams of protein in each meal, 3 meals a day. Now, so that takes a little bit of thought and intention for you to make sure at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're getting adequate amounts of protein into those meals. And so consider when you're going to do that and plan ahead for that. That often includes getting meats and poultry and fish and sometimes plant foods for other individuals that don't want those meat sources. And so they need to get the adequate amounts from those vegetables or those beans and legumes as well. Now focus on fiber. Fiber is super important. That fiber is going to make sure that we have the right kind of nutrients to feed the bacteria in our gut. And so this is essentially a prebiotic that's going to feed the probiotics, those good bacteria in our gut that are going to keep us healthy, keep our mood alive and in the right space, as well as digesting foods properly so that we don't have problems in our GI tract. Now, So these kinds of fibers are going to be helpful to also clean the pipes and make sure that we're going to the bathroom regularly and cleaning out those pipes. So make sure to look for those vegetables and fruits and legumes and whole grains and nuts and seeds. These all have high amounts of fiber in them. So put those in each of your meals. Now, consider cutting back on the taste testing. So when you're in the kitchen and you're preparing the foods, it's often common to taste test these things. Now, of course, you need to do that to make sure it's going to be the appropriate amounts of the right things that you're putting in there. But also consider not taking big gulps and big spoonfuls and big slices and then sitting down and having a full meal on top of that. Essentially, that's adding a huge amount, an extra serving into each of the meals that you're eating. So if you're the one in the kitchen, consider how much you're going to be consuming, just enough to be able to get the right flavors there. When you go out to meals at other people's homes, consider bringing a healthy dish. You'll be surprised. People will be happy that you did it. So bring some vegetables, bring some fruits, bring something that's healthy, that isn't laden with lots of fats and sugars, that might taste good, but also making sure that we have something that's healthy as well. So maybe you're bringing 2 dishes or 3 dishes, something that's healthy also for you and for your family members and the rest of the guests there. Limit your dessert intake. Now, of course, desserts are a big part of the holidays, and many of us enjoy indulging in them. And there's so many that we have as family recipes that we all want to try and share and bring to other people's homes. But making sure we're getting just enough of a portion that we get that taste and we get to satisfy ourselves and we get to remember all of those things, but also not overeating in those desserts. And so maybe it's just a small sliver of each, which would equate to just 1 serving in totality of those desserts. And so just being considerate and thoughtful of that, and sometimes we need to plan ahead so that we don't overindulge in those. Also, limiting our liquid calories. Now, many people find that during the holidays, they might be overindulging in some of those holiday drinks, alcohols and sodas and calorie-rich beverages, and they're all over the place. But making sure that if we are going to choose to have those, we're not getting too many of those in a given day. And so being very thoughtful and limiting those, because oftentimes those can have as many calories as an entire meal just in one liquid drink. And so again, trying to be thoughtful of that. Sometimes people find that using smaller plates is important, and so that they can limit the amount of food that they put on the plate because the plate in and of itself is small. Or if they're going to be getting desserts or extras, that they use a smaller plate to make sure that we're not putting too much food in front of ourselves. Sometimes we can modify our recipes as well so that we're limiting the amount of sugars and fats that are going in there and only using the appropriate kinds of foods. And so we can use substitutes when we're baking. And so we can replace some things with applesauce or bananas or pumpkin purees for the butters or sugars that we might be using, or using dried fruits instead of chocolates and candies and some of the desserts, or using stevia or erythritol or xylitol instead of the sugars in some of the dishes as well. And so these are just some strategies you might consider. And then also maybe limiting some of the heavy creams with some other kinds of substitutes. And so think about these things before you're preparing the meal so that you have the right ingredients available to you, so that you won't add these foods into your dishes, and you have the right alternatives available to you. You can also consider flavoring your drinks or flavoring your water or your soda water with some freshly squeezed lemons or limes or fruits. And this is another way of limiting accessing sugary drinks with something that still has flavor and is really indulgent, but not excessive on the calories. Some people find that weighing themselves in the beginning of the holidays to make sure that they get a set point and they know where they're beginning, and monitoring that periodically so that you don't exceed a certain amount. So setting goals and creating a boundary that you're not going to get above is helpful. Now, being cognizant of that, because we don't also want to get into a pattern of being too overridden with our thoughts, of monitoring that every day, every hour, but being considerate of it as well can be something that's useful for people. Sometimes having a buddy system, so have a friend or a family member that you're talking to and you're planning and you're utilizing strategies and you're talking about how am I going to get through this and what am I going to do in this situation, or do you have a thought or a way that you get through that, and that can often be really helpful. So making sure to plan for that in advance. Now, avoiding processed foods. This is really a time that often we have more time available to us to be in the kitchen, and so trying to be considerate of preparing those meals and not reaching for so many processed foods that are coming out of a box or a bag that have a lot of they are not very dense in nutrients, and they're just easy foods to eat. And so avoiding these can be really helpful for folks. Planning ahead, we've talked a lot about this now, but it's really important to be considerate. So think about in advance to the holidays, where am I going to be going on each of these days? What am I going to be bringing? Do I need to make sure to eat something in advance because I know there won't be the things that I can eat, or I will overindulge if I get there? Being thoughtful of that, or getting your buddy ready and making sure you have the right ingredients into your home. This can also be really helpful. Some folks consider skipping the seconds. So just put enough on that plate the first time around and then being done. Or using that strategy I talked about earlier, the hara hachibu. This is the 80%, eating until you're 80% full, and then pausing and considering whether you really need to eat any more. And then other folks just find creating a line. This is it. I'm only eating until this hour of the day. I'm only going to eat one plate. I'm only going to go for 2 drinks in the whole day, or something of that nature. And so you set limitations. So guys, I hope that some of these strategies were helpful. Again, if you found it to be something that you found interesting or helpful, press the like button and consider sharing this with your friends and families that might also find this valuable. Subscribe to our channel, and if you have questions, put them in the comments below and I'll make sure to address those as well. Once again, thanks for checking into this video, and I'll look forward to catching up with you soon. Take care and enjoy the holidays.